Welcome, football fans, to week 17 of the NFL season. Lots of games to pick, and to be honest, a lot of these picks are going to be really tough to pick, to be honest. We went through them, probably took about a half hour because a lot of them are just really tricky. A lot of them, there's a lot of playoff matchups to be decided this week, and probably a lot of them that will be decided, and a lot that won't be finished until week 18. And I still hate saying week 18 in the NFL because it still feels so contrived, and the only reason it's there is because of the money. This should be the last week of the NFL season, but let me know what you think in the comments down below, and let's get into the video for week 17 of the 2023 NFL season with the Jets versus the Cleveland Browns on Thursday night. I believe this is the last Thursday night game, and thank God it's a good time to do it because we have had some real crap on Thursday night once again, as we do every year, because it's not natural to go from a Sunday game to playing on Thursday night, especially the road team. The road team seems to always be at a total disadvantage, but Cleveland versus the Jets winning by the skin of their teeth last week. They really allowed, they almost let that game slip away. We have the Browns with the win last week over the Houston Texans, even though they kind of let them back into the game as well. Cleveland wins and is looking really good. The Jets looked pretty good last week. Their offense, anyway, their defense gave up a lot of points towards the end. But it should be an evenly matched fight in terms of the defense. Both offenses aren't the greatest, but Joe Flacco has been pretty darn good. And maybe he makes case for comeback player of the year. I don't know if I totally agree with that, just because he's only played a couple of games, but maybe he will. I have a feeling there's a good chance that he probably would get chosen for such award for a 41-year-old quarterback to come in and lead this team to the playoffs. It's amazing for the Cleveland Browns how much one change of defensive coordinator can make. How going from the same guys last year, where you're like bottom of the league in just about every category, to first in a lot of categories. But I think the Cleveland Browns win the final Thursday night football game just because they have a little bit more offensive firepower, and the Jets are really consistent in that department. You never know what you're going to get to on a week-to-week basis. Although if Breece Hall does what he did last week, they do have a good chance to pull off the upset. But in this case, I will go with the Cleveland Browns 24-14. I think it should be relatively close for most of the game. Then the Browns may pull away. But Browns win the final Thursday night game of the NFL season. Next, we have one of the best games of the week, Detroit versus Dallas. Detroit coming off the win versus Minnesota, where they were losing for a time. So I did get some people saying that Detroit had the best performance last week, but they played pretty well. But the Vikings did nearly win. And despite all the injuries the Vikings suffered last week, nearly beat the Lions. So that's something to say. Dallas lost to the Miami Dolphins, and it just kind of let that game slip away at the end. But they gave the Dolphins too much time and allowed them to just pick apart their way all the way down to the end zone. And I just knew, even though I knew when I picked the Cowboys last week that it could very well end up going that way, and sure enough, it did. Tyreek Hill was kept in check well enough. I mean, he almost had 100 yards, but I don't know. They kept him in check somewhat. Although Waddle got injured, but Dallas, their offense gets a little cute at times. They should have won the game last week for sure. Had a couple opportunities where they just failed. And same thing for Detroit. It's all going to be a matter of who can have the better defensive performance in this game. Who can get at the opposing quarterback, and of course, which quarterback is going to be most consistent. Dak Prescott, if you want to win that MVP, or still have any chance to win that MVP, you're going to have to play a nearly perfect game in this one. Well, not nearly perfect, because as good as the defense is for the Lions, their secondary isn't the best. But then again, neither is the Cowboys at times, because the Cowboys like to give up lots of yards, which the Detroit Lions are fully capable of dishing out. I will go with Dallas for now. Although I fully admit that it's more than likely than not for Detroit to win. I just have a feeling Dallas wins this game. You probably don't want to go into week 18 with a 3-game losing streak. We're getting lots of shit, and they kind of deserve it. They should have won last week, and it would behoove them to win this week, even though they kind of got screwed on some calls last week. Let's be honest, they kind of did. But I will go with Dallas 27-24 with the full understanding that Detroit probably should win this game. But it is in Dallas, so maybe that gives them a little bit of an edge. But Dallas wins 27-24. Indy versus Las Vegas, a very difficult game. This game is one I flipped back and forth on. Raiders with a great defensive performance last week against the Chiefs, although their offense was pretty bad. Although Zamir White really took it on the team on his back at the end to really put that game in the ground. Indy with a very poor performance against Atlanta. They started off good. They got a touchdown right away. They were up 7-0, and then all of a sudden their offense just disappeared. Completely disappeared. Probably doesn't help that Michael Pittman is out there because he's one of Gardner Minshew's best targets. And to be honest, as good as our wide receiving core has been at times, I feel like it really kind of falls off after Michael Pittman. Taylor didn't really have the greatest game after that. Didn't help that Moss was out. So once Taylor wasn't able to really get going after his first touchdown, just the offense kind of fell apart. And the Indies defense really fell apart when they've been pretty stellar this year, but they've had their duds for sure. Las Vegas, their offense is going to need to be better for sure, I would think. I think the Colts defense should be a little better in this one, but I fully admit that the Raiders could easily win this game. I think both of these teams could win this game. Both of these teams still both have a chance of the playoffs. Colts probably a little bit more. The Raiders kind of need to win out to really make their case, but it should be a really close matchup. It is in Indy, so that maybe that gives them the edge. Man, I really don't know who to pick in this one. It's a really tough matchup for sure. And it's just, you never know what offense you're going to get from the Raiders, and really you never know what offense you're going to get from the Colts on a week-to-week basis. I think I will go with the Colts. With the full understanding that I could be wrong. I will go with the Colts 24-21, but I don't know how good I feel about that pick. San Francisco versus Washington. San Francisco is going to win this game. They should, after being embarrassed on Monday night against the Baltimore Ravens. I don't expect Brock Purdy to throw 4 picks again. Although Washington gave the Jets a game last week and nearly won it at the end with Jacoby Brissett. What happened to Sam Howell? I know a lot of it has to do with the offensive line not being good, but I still believe in Sam Howell. I don't want them to give up on him. I still think he has a future in this league. But I would think Jacoby Brissett would probably go in this one. I mean, the past couple of weeks, Sam Howell hasn't had a really good track record. And when Jacoby Brissett has come in, he's been able to find receivers, get out of the pocket. He's been a little more mobile than Sam Howell, which has definitely helped the Redskins make a lot of games look closer than they first appeared. San Francisco's offense should get rip-roaring ready to go. McCaffrey should have a great game. Purdy should be bombing it down the field to Ayuk and Debo for most of the game, and George Kittle too. I don't expect Washington to really have any shot in this game. Maybe since it's in Washington, it gives Washington a little bit of an edge. Not to win, but just the home factor, even though that stadium is a total piece of crap. And maybe that's why. Maybe the stadium is so bad that an injury happens, but I think San Francisco wins this handily, 30-17. Maybe Washington keeps it close for the first half, but ultimately submits to the onslaught that is the San Francisco offense. Next, we have LA Rams versus the New York Giants. The Rams should win this game for sure, although the Giants did give the Eagles a game last week, and it was a very competitive game, especially after the legend of Tommy Cutlets ended, which is a shame, but let's be honest, Tyrod Taylor is still the better option, and it was only because that Tyrod Taylor was hurt that Tommy Cutlets was in there to begin with. The Rams looked strong last week against the Saints, putting up a lot of offense. Kieran Williams looks like a star in the making. Puka Nacua may slowly be edging Cooper Kupp as Stafford's favorite wide receiver. Of course, Kupp is still the favorite by default, but if you look back at the track record the past couple of games, Puka Nacua has slowly taken over the targets overall over Kupp. Now, Kupp still has a good game here and there for sure, and it's usually goes back and forth between which wide receiver dominates in the targets in the receptions department, but Puka Nacua has really been building on a very strong rookie season. Probably a really good pickup for Dynasty fans. It would definitely be a good pick to keep. And their defense has been sneaky good. I mean, they've been able to cause turnovers. They've been able to get after the quarterback, being good at slowing down the run. They've been a very good team, and they have a really good shot at the playoffs. If they win this week, they go a long way to submitting their claim to a playoff spot. The Giants will probably give the Rams a game for a while, at least. Saquon Barkley is still strong. That defense still has a chance to cause turnovers and really get to the quarterback. It's just a matter of, can the Giants cut down on the turnovers? It's probably the one thing. If they can cut down on the turnovers, they should be able to win this game. But I will go with the Rams for sure. 27-17. Should be a close game for most of the game, but I think the Rams pull away just because of their superior running game. Should be able to wean that clock out and win the game, but should be a good matchup for most of the game regardless. Miami versus Baltimore, another one of the best games of the week. Baltimore with a huge win over San Francisco and Santa Clara on Monday night. Miami with the big win over Dallas. Finally, they beat a team above 500, but let's be honest, they beat the Cowboys, and we all know the Cowboys are good at choking in the season. It basically was a battle of the teams most likely to choke on a yearly basis, but Miami looks great. Who knows if Waddle's going to play? That would certainly hurt. Their running game has been a mess the last couple weeks, to be honest. Nobody's really taken over the pile in that department. They've been handing off to Mostert, Jeff Wilson Jr., Devon Achane hasn't really had much, and it's just been kind of a free-for-all. You never really know who's going to get majority of the carries on a week-to-week basis. And we know that Baltimore is good at handling the run. They should be able to lock down on the run somewhat in this game. Their superior secondary is really, really good. Although Lamar Jackson didn't have a good first quarter last week against the 49ers, they came out and balled out in the second half. And let's just say this. Yeah, it sucks that Lamar Jackson tripped over an official in the end zone, but nobody expected Lamar Jackson to run 20 yards back to the end zone to try and escape a tackle. Everybody expected him to throw it away. And to be honest, I think the safety is largely on Lamar Jackson. They don't need to make a rule change in that department. For God's sake, the NFL's already made enough rule changes on a week-to-week basis. We know the Ravens have a strong running game, and they should be able to press that advantage this week. It's going to be a very competitive game. I am going with Baltimore, which opens up the chance for Miami to lose the division in Week 18 against the Buffalo Bills. So if the Miami Dolphins really want to show that they're for real, they would win this game, win that division outright, and make a really strong claim for the number one. Or actually, they would claim the number one overall spot, at least for the week, if they do beat Baltimore. But I will go with Baltimore 30-27. Very competitive. But I think Baltimore just has a little bit more. Their defense is just a little bit stronger. Next, Tampa Bay versus New Orleans. I went back and forth on this game a lot as well. Tampa Bay has been looking strong the past couple weeks. They really blew out Jacksonville in the first half. Jacksonville had no chance of winning that game, and I feel bad for changing my pick in my pick'em pool. The Saints did not look good against the Rams last week. They looked pretty terrible for most of the game. I mean, it did end up being 30-22, but it was 30-7 with like 6.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So that's not good. Tampa Bay is looking strong. Their running game has been great. Mike Evans is still reliable, and Baker Mayfield has been playing well and has been cutting down on the turnovers, which has largely helped them, and their defense has been really darn good. The Saints have been very week to week. You never know which offense you're going to get after a great offense the 2 weeks the week before. Then they just fall apart against a good team like the Rams. Who knows what team you're going to get this week? I think I will go with the Saints. I don't know how confident I feel. I just think the Saints will split the season series. But I am fully willing to be wrong on that pick. If the Saints want to win this game, they're going to have to be strong for all 4 quarters. If they get behind in this game, they will not win, and should be an easy win for Tampa Bay. But I will go with the Saints. I think since usually it's a week on, week off basis, I will go with the Saints and hope that this is their week and they can stay in the playoff race, because I think, they lose this week, they're done. So they are playing for the playoff lives. I'll give it to the Saints, and with still having a shot to win the division in week 18. Saints 24, Tampa Bay 21. But I don't know how confident I feel in that pick. Carolina versus Jacksonville. Carolina nearly pulled off the upset win last week, and if it was not for the time going out, Carolina very well could have beaten the Green Bay Packers, which is very disappointing. Jacksonville, again, getting outplayed, just completely outplayed and outcoached by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I like Jacksonville to bounce back in this game, even though Trevor Lawrence is day-to-day with that shoulder injury. He just hasn't had the greatest season in the world, and it's really unfortunate. They probably need a new offensive coordinator in there, because as good as the Jags have been on offensive time this year, they've had just as many weeks where they've just been unable to do anything. And Carolina is not great, but their offense looked pretty good last week, and probably a large thing to do because of the Packers' defense is so bad at times. But Jacksonville's defense hasn't been that good lately either. So maybe Carolina can make this a game. I think Jacksonville wins. I think a lot of it largely rides on if Trevor Lawrence plays. But it is Carolina Panthers, so maybe if Trevor Lawrence doesn't play, CJ Beathard could step in and play well. I will go with the Jacksonville Jaguars 21-17. I don't know how confident I feel in that game. It really depends on if Trevor Lawrence is able to go or not. Etienne hasn't had a good game in the past couple weeks, and this would probably be a prime Travis Etienne game to win, after Carolina's rushing defense was totally attacked last week by Green Bay for most of the game. But I will go with Jacksonville 21-17. Philadelphia versus Arizona. Arizona didn't look the greatest last week against the Bears. The Bears kind of dominated for most of the game. Philadelphia, with the win over the Giants last week, which came down to the last play of the game at a bad throw by Tyrod Taylor. The Eagles, even though they won last week, they're just been inconsistent. Their offense should be way better than what they have been, and their defense is just bad at times. It's just so bad at giving up yards left and right. They've just had a very bad season for the defense. You never know who's going to have a big game for the offense on a week-to-week basis now, it seems. I think a lot of it largely rides on Jalen Hurts, and to be honest, going into next year, if you're looking for a quarterback to pick, I would stay away from Jalen Hurts, because as good as he has been in the past, and he did break the record for rushing touchdowns by quarterback last week, he just hasn't been consistent. Hasn't been able to throw consistently down the field. Has had a lot of bad throws on a week-to-week basis. But I still think the Eagles should win this pretty handily. Maybe 30-17. I think Arizona may give it a game early on, but they just have so many missing pieces out there. Are going to need to do a large amount of work in the draft this year. Who knows what's going to happen with Kyler Murray? I will go with the Eagles, but if the Eagles lost, it wouldn't be surprising. To be honest, they just haven't been consistent at all, and it would not surprise me at all if they lost. Buffalo versus New England, a great-looking game this week, although not really. The Patriots win over Denver last week. The Buffalo win by the skin of their teeth against the Chargers last week. What happened to Buffalo last week? I don't know. They seemingly have been inconsistent too. After having a good couple of weeks after firing Ken Dorsey, last week was just a mystery. Josh Allen back to throwing interceptions, and just the offense just couldn't get going in the first half until the second quarter, where Josh Allen willed a couple touchdowns, but they kept the Chargers in it for most of the game. And if not for a couple of plays that went against the Chargers very well could have won, and the Bills would have taken a huge hit in their playoff chances. The Patriots are just a sneaky good team. I don't know why they're trying to play so hard. I don't know why they wouldn't just tank and get that pick for a quarterback. They really need a new quarterback in the offseason. They need to try and get one of those potential franchise quarterbacks, even though, to be honest, none of the quarterbacks in the draft this year look to be real franchise-changing talents, to be honest. I think they could fill in a lot of holes other places, but to be honest, Mac Jones is not great and he hasn't played for a couple weeks, and Bailey Zappi easily isn't the answer, even though he's shown good play at times. You would think the Patriots would be looking to next year to get a good pick, but they continue to win, and I will still go with Buffalo. Buffalo should win this game and set themselves up for a potential division-winning matchup against the Miami Dolphins next week. The Buffalo should win 24-14. But as we all know, the Bills have been inconsistent at times this year. So I guess maybe the Patriots could pull off the season sweep and really put a nail in Buffalo's playoff chances. Well, not a nail, but it would hurt them, to be honest. Chicago versus Atlanta. Atlanta with a big game win over Indy last week. Chicago with the win over Arizona. I don't know. This game is kind of a toss-up, to be honest. Atlanta has been very inconsistent for most of the year. It seems like a week-to-week basis, you'll get a good performance and then a bad performance. The Bears have been strong lately. I mean, I still don't think Justin Fields is the answer, but it probably is still more of an answer than Caleb Williams, to be sure. Still don't think Justin Fields is a great quarterback, but he's been working the system and has been avoiding turnovers, which has definitely helped his game. The defense has been kind of good at times, so they've been keeping them in games. They haven't played the best of competition, so that might play a part in it as well. I think I'll go with Chicago. I think I'll go with Chicago to win the game this week, because I just don't think Atlanta's very good, and I just think they're terribly inconsistent. You never know which running back is going to have a good game. They should be way better than what they are. And their defense has been kind of a mystery as well for most of the year. I will give the Bears the win, 24-21, but it could easily go the other way in favor of Atlanta. Just for now, I'll go with the Bears. Houston versus Tennessee. Again, a large part of this game rides upon if CJ Stroud is able to play. Houston playing for their playoff lives this week. Tennessee is out of it, but they did almost get the win over Seattle last week. And Derrick Henry hasn't had the best season, but just about every other week he's been able to get a couple touchdowns. He nearly had 100 yards last week. He looked pretty good after the abysmal week that was the week before. Tannehill is in there, and he's just not very effective, but he was effective enough to avoid turnovers, and he nearly won the game last week against the Seattle Seahawks. Who knows if Will Levis is going to play or not. That would definitely provide a spark for Tennessee. I think Will Levis is their better option at this point, but with them out of the playoff chase, who knows if he will actually play. again, Houston is a good team. They didn't play very well last week, but I think I'll go with Houston. I think C.J. Stroud should be able to play, but who knows? He could be out again with concussion symptoms, or Houston could decide to hold him out and forego a playoff chance this year and just build on the good season success that they had this year. I think Houston wins, but it should be a pretty close game. Houston wins 20-17, but should be a pretty close matchup to be fair. But I openly admit that it could go either way. Pittsburgh versus Seattle, another game that could go either way. Seattle has been inconsistent for most of the year, but they looked decent last week at times, although at other times it didn't look very good either. Pittsburgh with the rousing win over the Cincinnati Bengals last week. Look on Mason Rudolph, looking great. Maybe Pittsburgh should have switched to him sooner. Defense came out strong last week. Her running attack looked good. And George Pickens, after being dogged and righted all week long, he had a great game for sure. And maybe Pittsburgh can continue this and still have a chance at the playoffs. I still don't think Pittsburgh is a very good team. I think they're kind of stagnant. I think they're stuck in ripe in mediocrity, and we know they're not going to fire Mike Tomlin, even though I think they probably should. I think the message has lost its meaning, and like I said before, the Steeler way has been rife with mediocrity the past couple of years. I will go with Seattle. It is in Seattle, so maybe that gives them the edge. But I think Pittsburgh could win this game, just that because of the performance last week and Seattle's inconsistency. I will go with Seattle winning 20-17, but it could go either way for sure. The Chargers and the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos looking bad the past couple weeks. Last week, nearly leading the comeback to win the game, and then they just fall apart and allow New England to win with the regulation win, the game-ending field goal. The Chargers looking pretty darn good against the Bills at times last week. It's amazing how much a coaching change or firing a coach can inspire a team, because the Chargers look way better than they have for most of the season last week, nearly blowing off the upset. I think I will go with the Chargers to Denver after having a good shot at the playoffs a couple weeks ago. Have utterly fallen apart. They're probably going to look for a new quarterback next year. I don't think Sean Payton is happy at all with Russell Wilson, just his inconsistency and his willingness to throw turnovers left and right. I will go with LA to win just because they have been playing better. There's really nothing of note on the team. I mean, Austin Eckler has been playing better of late, but their defense has just played better. They played better for their coaches. They played better since Brandon Staley's been fired. And maybe with the right coach next year, the Chargers can be back at it again. But I will go with the Chargers to win in a close matchup, 27-24. I just think Denver is utterly devastated, and this will put their final nail in their playoff hopes. Cincinnati versus Kansas City, another toss-up game. One of the last of the week. Of course, the Packer game will come in a separate video, but Cincinnati didn't have a great game last week, but I still think they have a good team and still think they have a good shot at make the playoffs. Kansas City needs to get their crap together. Last week was an embarrassing loss to the Raiders because the Raiders just punked them for most of the game. And even though they outgained the Raiders on offense, they didn't look good at all. People screaming at each other on the sidelines. Travis Kelce getting into it with Andy Reid. Their season should still end up with a playoff berth, I would think. But this game is a toss-up. Cincinnati still has playoff hopes of their own. Yes, they're going back to Kansas City, but as I'd like to point out, they've lost their last 3 home games, all against good competition. So they haven't looked very good for most of the year, and their defense has been failing. They've been giving up yards left and right. They gave up that huge run by Zamir White last week to end the game. I mean, how can you afford to give that run up when you have a chance to win, to just be utterly destroyed by Zamir White on that game-ending run? It's just embarrassing. I will go with Kansas City, but it should be a very close game, 27-24. Cincinnati is still playing for the playoffs, and they still have a chance to get in. So it's far from an easy win for Kansas City. And there you go, our last game of the week. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Another video will be coming out in the next couple of days with breaking down the Packers versus the Minnesota Vikings. Another toss-up game for sure. Let me know what you think. Have a great day. Go Pack Go. And God bless.